Hello there, my name is Chip Crowley, and this is my tribe talk on my wicked problem, which is childhood obesity. Alright, so before getting started, I just wanted to quickly go over some of the objectives I hope you get out of this tribe talk. So first, we'll have a brief introduction on the problem of obesity. We'll then go into the current situation and impact that obesity is having on our country. We'll dive into some of the contributing factors that are contributing to childhood obesity currently. We'll then go over the problem statement for my wicked problem. We'll then look at my approach and execution for my proposed solution, some of the key activities that are involved in that as well. I'll briefly touch on how I plan to quantify success in my solution, and then a brief conclusion. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so I wanted to provide a brief introduction to the problem that obesity is posing to Americans as a whole. So obesity is linked to numerous chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, hyperlipidemia, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. And a recent CDC study found that obesity now accounts for up to 18% of deaths for Americans aged 40 to 85, and that's a number that's continuing to rise. A lot of the lifestyle choices and habits which lead to obesity are instilled very early in life, particularly during childhood. And a recent study found that currently less than 1/4 of American children are participating in the CDC's recommended 60 minutes of daily physical activity. These 60 minutes are not very well reinforced in our public school systems currently, with only 51% of high school students on average attending PE classes weekly and only 30% attending them daily. So there's a lot of room for growth in our school system to ensure that students are getting the physical activity they need. The CDC, of note, lists physical activity as one of the 4 major contributing factors towards childhood obesity. One of the other big factors towards childhood obesity, which I looked at, is nutrition. And with children on average consuming more than 1/3 of their daily caloric intake during school hours, the school food environment plays a crucial role in influencing a children's eating behaviors and also aiding in the fight against obesity. So next we'll be looking at the current situation of obesity and its impact on America as a whole. All right, so next I wanted to touch on the current situation and impact of obesity on Americans as a whole. I wanted to look at this through 3 different lenses. First, the economic lens. Second, the workplace productivity and academic performance lens. And then lastly, the health effects of obesity on Americans. So looking at it holistically, the problem of obesity is affecting Americans in a very negative fashion. First, economically, it places an enormous economic strain on the United States. In just 2008, which is almost 2 decades ago now, medical costs of prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of obesity-related medical issues costing an estimated $147 billion. At the time, that was nearly 10% of all medical spending, and that's a number that's continuing to rise as obesity becomes more prevalent in our country. Looking at it from a workplace productivity lens, productivity losses due to obesity-related absences costed U.S. companies on average between $3.3 billion and $6.4 billion annually in 2019. And again, as obesity continues to rise in America, that number we will see to continue to rise as well. And lastly, just looking at the health effects of it, particularly in children, obesity affects Americans in a very negative fashion, with some of the main issues that obesity in children can cause being energy imbalance along with low bone density. And both of these issues negatively correlate to academic performance according to the CDC study in 2020. Physical inactivity has also been shown to have adverse cognitive effects, with less physically active students typically having worse grades, school attendance, and classroom behaviors. So that's the current kind of status of where we stand with obesity in America, and next we're going to look at some of the contributing factors to obesity. So next I wanted to hit on some of the major contributing factors towards obesity in America. Despite the immense physical and cognitive effects spurred by physical inactivity in children, which I outlined in the previous slide, there are currently no federal requirements for school-based physical activity. And meanwhile, less than half of the U.S. states, about 21 states currently, mandate a minimum weekly amount of time spent in physical education or physical activity classes. The next major factor I found was poor nutrition, and there's many root causes to poor nutrition, probably too many for the scope of this tribe talk, but some of the ones that I found were food insecurity and poor financial situations of children's families. But I found some pretty staggering statistics that really kind of helped me hone in on this, with Fewer than 1 in 10 adolescents currently eating enough fruits or vegetables in their diet, and 6 in 10 adolescents aged 2 to 19 consuming at least one sugary beverage on any given day. And with a healthy and balanced diet being so crucial in the fight against obesity, I found poor nutrition to be a pretty large factor. And lastly, I wanted to touch on school budgets because they're often the deciding factor in the quality of a school's nutrition program. However, more than half of a school's cafeteria budget on average is typically allocated towards personnel, and that often leaves schools with very little capital to direct towards quality nutrition. Meanwhile, U.S. school lunches are currently becoming more and more expensive, with the average U.S. school lunch now being over $3 a meal. And that's led over 60% of school meal directors to say that they are feeling pretty strapped financially to provide their students with a healthy and balanced nutrition. Some of the major factors I found in the rise of school lunch prices were supply chain challenges and inflation. And with nearly 22 million students receiving free or reduced priced daily meals, we want to really look at this lack of funding piece. And as you'll see in my solution, that's one of the kind of contributing factors that I look to attack the most. So next, we'll be looking at my problem statement. So my problem statement reads, to combat childhood obesity, my objective is to create more opportunities for children to be physically active and nutritionally sound in America's school systems. When looking at the current situation and impact of obesity, along with contributing factors to obesity in America, I really saw children and trying to prevent childhood obesity as kind of the root cause of all the underlying issues. And I saw America's gaps in its school system in both providing children with opportunities to be physically active and nutritionally sound as the areas where I can make the most impact. So in the next slide, I'll be going over the approach and execution of my proposed solution. So next I wanted to touch base on my solution along with how I plan to execute it. So I foresee my solution to this wicked problem being in the form of utilizing a team of field-level experts in child nutrition, physical training, and pediatrics to provide recommendations to a school district on how they can best tailor their nutrition and physical education programs to ultimately bolster the health and well-being of their students. While federal grant assistance can help typically offset a school's budgetary shortfalls, I hope that the assistance I'm able to provide will be able to help counsel these schools on how to create health opportunities for students despite the budgetary constraints that they currently face. Some examples of areas where I hope to be able to provide administrators with particular counsel include estimating the school district's free cash flows, capital budgeting decision assistance, and asset risk management. And when looking at this, I wanted to see particularly who I'd be affecting by enacting these changes. And when looking at bolstering a school's physical education program, I hope to provide value for the entire student body. But looking particularly at the optimizing of a school district's nutrition program, I hope to have a particularly profound impact on low-income students, with most students who participate in school meals typically coming from middle to low-income homes. I see these students as our most important customers, as students who commonly deal with food insecurity are increasingly prone to childhood obesity due to often have to relying on junk food and processed foods. By helping a school district focus in these areas, I really hope to promote healthy habits and active lifestyles among students and instill those habits early in their lives to ultimately address the root causes of obesity in America. After summarizing my proposed solution in the previous slides, I hope to outline the key activities I foresee comprising my proposed solution. The first of which being to obtain a stronger understanding of where the school district's finances currently stand and the budgetary constraints that they're facing. From an analysis perspective of the current strategies being employed by the school district, I hope to utilize the Boston Consulting Group matrix. This matrix is explicitly designed for multi-divisional firms with scarce resources, and it has a portfolio analysis capability that provides firms with a division-by-division comparison of operating profits to assist decision makers with how to best allocate scarce resources. With school districts being case in point of an organization which has scarce resources and many different divisions, I foresee this being a particularly effective model in providing school administrators with a strong snapshot of where their finances currently stand. And after obtaining this snapshot of the school's available capital, I hope to consult with a nonprofit. The one I was able to identify is Action for Healthy Kids, and they currently assist nearly 50,000 schools nationwide in fundraising, offering school grants and identifying additional capital streams. And I hope to consult with Action for Healthy Kids to identify potential additional streams of capital for the school district I'll be advising. And when adding these additional funding streams to the accurate amount of capital I was able to identify through the Boston Consulting Group matrix, I hope to have a more clear-cut number of the amount of capital I'll be working with in helping a school streamline their physical education and nutrition systems. And this is where I would utilize my team to really establish these relationships with the school administrators, and I would do that through bi-monthly meetings. They would look at this available capital and recommend changes that would be effective in bolstering both programs. And while this would be probably a big shock for a school that probably has done things the same way for a long time, I would hope that the relationships that we're able to establish through utilizing organizational behavior policies would make these school administrators feel comfortable with what we're recommending. With school districts not typically having a strong social media presence, I would hope to kind of bolster that in broadcasting these changes to students and parents, along with utilizing letters from home and local press to broadcast any changes the school district implements. With these outlets typically being where parents receive school-related news, I would hope these announcements would easily integrate into their existing routines, and it would make it easy to kind of clarify any of the changes that we decide to make. Next, we'll be going into how I plan on quantifying success in this proposed solution. When quantifying success in my proposed solution, I hope to look at it from a couple different facets. First off, after working with Action for Healthy Kids to identify some additional funding streams, along with kind of streamlining the current funding that the school district is receiving through the BCG matrix, I hope to do a comparison of available capital both before and after we begin to work with the school district. And I think that'll at least be a solid starting metric. I then hope to examine the school district's existing human resources, and that'll basically consist of evaluating the current nutrition and physical education staffs and seeing how adequately manned they are, and then evaluating them again after my team of advisors begins to work and propose changes to the school district. That'll be looking at it from more of a manning level, and then looking at it further down the road, and this will probably be something that would be 6 months to a year after we implement changes into both programs. It will be looking at standardized test scores, graduation rates, attendance, stuff more with the students. And I think that that's going to be something that we have to look at a little bit further down the road, because we want to see how these changes work after months of implementation. So those are just a few areas where I look to quantify success. It's definitely going to be something that's dynamic, but I look forward to seeing how these changes would hopefully help these students for the better going forward. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on a couple potential roadblocks that I foresee in this proposed solution. The first of which being resistance to change on behalf of the school administration, with many school administrators often having served in their school districts for long periods of time. Some may view the implementation of changes as unnecessary and would prefer to maintain the status quo. And I hope to mitigate this by involving as many stakeholders as possible into the strategic formulation process and ultimately try to foster a sense of empowerment in these decisions. The other roadblock I could potentially foresee is my lack of experience in both the education and fundraising realms. And I hope to mitigate this by really leaning on the team that I'll be formulating of subject matter experts to hopefully kind of bridge that gap and be able to foster that sense of trust still amongst myself and the school district. I also want to just quickly touch on the environmental impacts, and really with the total impact of obesity on climate change being an extra 700 megatons per year of CO2 emissions. I think that while we're starting small, by instilling habits in younger people, we're going to be hoping to reduce that impact of obesity on overall climate change. And that's something that I see as very encouraging. And while obesity in America is definitely a massive problem to try and tackle, I see instilling these habits of daily physical activity and healthy nutrition in public schools as a very commendable starting point. And by helping a school district focus in these areas, I hope to promote both healthy habits and an active lifestyle among students and ultimately address these root causes of obesity. So with that, that's all I have. I really appreciate you guys being here for this presentation, and I look forward to watching yours as well. Thanks a lot.